Hi, for those who don't know me, I'm Steve Barnett. I'm the Tribal Council Chair of the Cowlitz Indian Tribe. Having said that, what we're talking today is we're doing on our own time with our own resources in our personal capacity, not in our professional capacities. Today, I have with me Cheryl Bell, Chris Kitts, Larry Kestner, and Rod Van Mecklin, and we're just going to talk a little bit about the February Tribal Council meeting and the continuation meeting. Chris, you were talking a little bit about some of the positives as we were getting ready to start the video. What did struck you as really positive coming out of it?
Yeah, so I think there were several things. One really big deal, I think, is that we approved an amendment to our state compact, and we now are going to receive an additional $500,000 per year in fuel tax that then can be distributed as GWE. And the other piece that really ties into that too is at the meeting we also approved a contract amendment with FSA TPA to be able to give members debit cards that they can receive their GWE funds too, which is a really big deal and really great for those members who don't have a bank account. This is a way to get them those funds much faster. And it's also really great to have an additional $500,000 a year that can be put into that bucket and distributed as GWE.
And I will say all credit to that goes to Ed Fleischer, the attorney for CTGA, who negotiated out that compact. He's the first one in the state that has been able to get up to 90% of the tax that he was able to get to. And as you said, that's $500,000 a year. Anybody else have any topics that really jumped out at them? Larry, what jumped out at you in the meeting?
Well, we had two meetings. We had a lot of positives, um, but the biggest thing I think that jumped out at me is that in our first February TC meeting, we agreed to get more information on resolution. Uh, what was it? 2132, and that was regarding Phil Harju and
92.
tribal council as a whole agreed to get more information, including all the associated notes, and then we would come back in March and then readdress that topic once we were educated. A lot of us on tribal council knew we weren't here in 21. Um, I thought that was a positive because then we were going to vote in an educated manner. But then in our continuation meeting, before we could get that information, there was a motion made and we did vote to rescind that resolution and then release the information to tribal council and to general council. Now, what was frustrating is that, I've always taught my kids that I want them to vote in an educated manner. And this vote was the exact opposite. I think that some people didn't want us to be educated and vote. I think that maybe there was some fear that if we were educated as a tribal council, that vote might not have turned out that way. So that was really disappointing for me. You never want to vote in ignorance, in my opinion. You always want to be as educated as possible. So that was something that was a little disappointing.
So
Um,
Cheryl, on that, you were actually able to, I think, put a very important amendment on that. What did you add to that resolution?
The amendment that I brought forward was that we would remove the attorney-client privilege from the documents surrounding um, that resolution 2192, and that it be presented to general counsel and tribal council for review. I wish we would have been able to get all that information before we took the vote to rescind that 2192. That's not how it worked out, but I am glad to see that we're releasing the information to our people and to our new tribal council members. I think that's very important. Thank you.
It
and
really is important that the general council members will be able to make their own decision, however they want to make it, based on the information. Larry, did you have more to add there?
yeah, I just wanted to say that the lesson that we're teaching our people, and we're setting an example as a tribal council, and we got to keep that in mind. And the lesson here, I think, is that you want to vote without the information first. You want to vote with less information rather than more information. And this is a lesson that we're teaching our tribal members and our youth. And to me, that's what was so disappointing about that vote. And I want to point out, we were going to vote on this 12 days later. Next Saturday, March 1st, is when we were going to address this topic. So we're only saving 12 days there. That vote saved 12 days. It was 12 days prior to us getting the information and then voting with that knowledge. And so that's what's really disappointing is the example that we're setting as a tribal council to our members and to our youth.
Rod, what struck you in the meeting? What of the meeting, the continuation, what was the major topic you took up, or one of the major topics you took out of it?
I didn't carry a lot from the meeting, but I have a major complaint, which is about the way that we used to fill the tribal council vacancies, which was that we had a very fair system that we had created to replace the way it had been done previously, where it cut out our general council members. And we replaced that with a method whereby people from the general council could nominate themselves, or anybody could nominate them from the general council. And that's now been thrown out. And it's now been limited to tribal council nominating tribal council for filling the vacant seats. And that's not fair in my opinion, and I just don't like it. Thank you.
I think it's even worse than that, Rod, because we had that for several years, that, like you said, where anyone could nominate themselves, which is what we do with every committee. And then when it came time to fill Kim Ephelt's seat, suddenly there was all the kinds of pressure we couldn't do that. And several tribal council members said, well, they weren't on the tribal council to vote for that. But then when it came time to fill Robin's seat, they went back to it temporarily. I know that there's forming a committee to come up with a constitutional amendment for it, but I don't know why it was absolutely could not be. And if you look at that video from the December meeting, I took all kinds of heat in that meeting, not because we were having it done that way. But then when it came time to replace Robin, they were quite fine with doing that method. Anybody else have any
You're
thoughts on
right,
this
I'd
topic Rod
forgotten.
brought up?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think it's crazy to, well, no, it's not, isn't crazy. I understand why. It's unfortunate that we are unable to do things consistently each time. And it's unfortunate also, as Rod said, that it seems to be that the intent of these last ones were to cut out the will of the people and to not let everyone in the tribe nominate who they deem to be appropriate. It's the way we've done it on committees. It's the way it's worked before. I don't understand. I don't think it's appropriate to simply change a process or a policy because it suits your interests. It needs to be fair and consistent across the board.
I agree. I'm going to throw out something that I think is a little controversial, even in our group, but the child care GWE that went down for a vote. Now, I was on that committee. I will state that for some reason I was not invited to the committee meeting where they made the decision to bring that to tribal council. We had never discussed a pilot project. We'd never even discussed a direct GWE payment. They did that at a single meeting and they left off every member of the committee who had been working on it for a couple of years, except for Maverick, who was the chair of the committee. And then they brought on Gail and some staff before they brought the GWE forward. But for those of you who voted against that, why did you vote against that? Anybody want to jump in?
I
Yeah,
voted against that.
go ahead,
Go
Cheryl.
ahead, Cheryl, and then Larry.
I voted against it because we're in the middle of figuring out what we want to do with our GWE to our people. And I feel that we need to be able to hold where we are, find out what we're going to do with our GWEs, and then take a look at that. We shouldn't be adding more programs in the middle of all of this.
Larry, did you have more to add?
Okay,
Oh, sorry,
go ahead.
Cheryl.
It's okay. Go ahead. I'm done.
Yeah, I did not support that at all. And we're in a new framework now. Just last November, we voted to devote 50% of our casino revenue, now that our debts are paid off, to government programs and to member GWE. And I see it as my job is as a council member is to get as much of that GWE directly out to our members as possible with the least administrative burden. I do not every employee now that we hire, that's taken away from our members GWE. Every penny. We could not say that a year ago. But now we have these, we have the CEA, we have our land fund, we have our trust, and then we have 50% going to government and members GWE. So it is my job is to get that GWE once our government has been subtracted from that 50%, get it out to our members directly. Because every GWE program we come up with, and I could come up with some great ones, it's going to take away from that greater body, all of our members. We need to give that out to all of our members, not to certain interest groups within our members, because it's taken away from everybody for every GWE program that we have.
I would just add, if
So
I could,
go ahead, Chris.
that I think so. To Cheryl's point, now is not the time for that to be brought forward. It should be a part of the overall package and the overall plan that we put in place for GWE, as opposed to being a one-off before that. I mean, certainly I support childcare and I support children. I have two run around the house here somewhere. But I think that it's childcare itself is empowering for our members and will help them, or can help them work. It can help them have jobs. It can help them, earn an income. So I support those services being provided so that our members can do those things. But right now, as we are putting together the overall GWE package, if you will, or the overall plan for what we do with all of our GWE, this needs to all be done together. And we shouldn't be doing one-offs prior to proposing and putting forward a plan for all the dollars.
Can I
Cheryl,
bring
did you have
something
something to
else
add?
up? I do. There's been some talk recently from a couple of our members about holding money back on our 50% GWE to be distributed for different various reasons. And I think that people need to pay attention to that, because we voted to put 50% out in GWE and programs. We didn't vote. They did not vote. Our people did not vote to have our money set aside.
Yeah, I will say I think we're all in agreement that the idea is to get the money to the members and let the members decide how best to use it. There are 5 safe harbors. We won't go into them, but anybody listening to this video is using at least one of the safe harbors, because you have to buy housing, you have to buy food, you have education. But we really need to get that under 18 um, GWE up to the point where it can support some of these things, and the parents can make the decision whether they want after school sports because their kids are older and they don't need direct childcare, or whether they need childcare, but it gives more of a leverage so you can decide what you need specifically, rather than us creating these blanket programs with overhead on each blanket program. This pilot was going to involve, I think it was 10% of it, it may have been a little bit more, was to pay for staff to run the program, this pilot GWE, out of money. Whereas instead of just giving you the dollars directly and letting you decide how you need to spend those dollars amongst your kids and your family. Did anybody have any other topics that they wanted to hit today? Anything big, any positives they want to end with?
Yes, but before I do that, Steve, I want to just go back to the GWEs. All of the proposals that I've seen, including the one that I have proposed, are going to put out a significant amount of funds to our parents for their youth, and there will be no restrictions on it. So any of the proposals that are going to come out in our March meeting, our members are going to see that money can be used for childcare. It can be used for a first car. It can be used for whatever that parent thinks is best for their child. So, and our members are going to see that come March 1st at our meeting.
And I will just say there are safe harbors that we have to give the money in GWE in certain areas. But as Larry said, first car, that's not a GWE program. But the money that you may have spent on your housing that you can now spend on your child's first car because you're spending the GWE money on housing allows you to kind of move around in your own budget. So it's not for everything, but what it does is it frees up your own dollars. So you have these dollars to do these key programs, and then it frees up your own dollars for the things beyond that you want to do. So if we don't have any other big topics, Larry, you said you had a positive you wanted to end us on?
Yes, and this is something I'm excited about, and I've been asking about this, and this is we brought our youth program, our HHS department, brought forward a proposal to lift the restrictions on our youth program, including overnight stays for our youth. So for youth camp, for example, and we voted overwhelmingly, probably unanimously, to lift those restrictions, and that's something that I'm excited. We have some great policies and procedures, safeguards in place for our youth. And I'm excited to get us back up and rolling and get those youth back to their events where they belong.
I say too. So I think
Well,
that, I mean, there was a tremendous amount of work that went into this. And I think that, I mean, that the restrictions lasted for longer than we wanted them to. But I think that we are in a much better place now. And I know I feel really good about where we are, and I'm really excited to see things get back to normal.
and give credit to the committee that originally brought it up. I think Mike Isle was the tribal council rep on that committee, but the staff really took it with Michael and they really created a very solid plan that we can all feel secure and proud about, and it gets the youth back to full activities. And Chris, you're absolutely right. It took way long, and I think Larry alluded to it as well. It took way longer than we wanted it to, but it's done, and we're now all real comfortable with it. Um, with that, I think we'll go ahead and sign off for today. Thank you each for joining in and giving your input on the tribal council meeting that was.
Thank you.